Let's restore this vintage Coach bag. If you're new here, I am Jane. I thrift a lot and I happen to find vintage Coach somewhat often, and this one was such a special find. I had never seen this style before at the thrift, let alone I haven't seen anyone wearing one of these. It's the side pack and it was first produced in 1995, which I found out after, of course, looking up the style number inside. But today I'm gonna just go through and give it the love and care that it needs. And I will be taking the hardware off, which I haven't done before, so we're gonna learn this together. Let's first do a quick run through of all the supplies needed for this. First is a Scotty peeler, which I actually use to remove stickers from all my thrift finds. Next is some Brasso, which I'll use on the hardware, as well as some saddle soap to get the leather clean. A couple rags will do just to use all these products. And Bick 4 is what I will use to condition the leather to give it back that moisture. And you really just need one brush for this. I'm going to use two, and I'll show you the difference in how I use each. And I'll put a full list of the supplies linked in the description below. Using this plastic Scotty peeler was not my first choice. I was actually in the middle of a move here, so I was just using what I had lying around that wasn't yet packed up, and I actually ended up switching over to this random tool I had in my nail filing kit, which worked just fine. But if you want to make your life easier, I would suggest using a pair of needle nose pliers. But the main thing is, I'm just trying to be careful not to scratch the metal as I take it apart and off of the bag. The outer clasp was that 4-prong situation you just saw, and the inside piece was 2 prongs that just were overlapping on one another. It was a little hard to get in the bag and work there, but it's definitely manageable. And of course, the hang tag. I have to say I'm very happy the bag still had it attached, because oftentimes at the thrift, the hang tag is long gone or it's split, which if it's split, you can glue it back together. But this one is there, it's all in one piece. I'm so happy. Now that the hardware is all off the bag, it's time to use the Brasso and get it polished up. I'll speed up a couple clips here just so you can get an idea of how long it takes to use the Brasso, but it's really quick, honestly. You can see the difference here on half of the clasp, but there was this film or like protective layer on it, so I had to use some ultrafine steel wool to get that off. But look at the difference here on these first two pieces. It's so satisfying. I would say at most it maybe took me all of 10 to 20 minutes to clean the hardware up, and I did use a little bit of water. It seems to help activate the Brasso. Now that the hardware is off and polished up, it's time to move on to the leather, and I'm using my big brush to kind of wake it up and knock loose any loose dirt, dust, anything. And I didn't film this, but I actually vacuumed the inside to clean it up as well. And if you watched my first YouTube video, I did a Coach bag restoration where I dunked it in the sink. And for this bag, I opted to not dunk it because 1, it really wasn't that dirty, and 2, it's so controversial getting a leather bag wet, but sometimes it is necessary. So yeah, I am using the saddle soap here, which you actually should be using water. I don't know why I'm not using water here, or I must have wet the brush or something, but yeah, you'll want to use water to get the soap so it lathers, and you could just keep a bowl of water beside you to periodically dunk the brush into. And yeah, the small round brush is what I'm using to put all the saddle soap on to work it into the leather using that circular motion. And yeah, it's just a matter of then removing the saddle soap with one of the rags and then rinse and repeat on all sides of the bag. And there is a lot of stitching on this particular design, so the brush is really helpful for getting in those corners. As for the inside of the bag, like I mentioned, it really wasn't dirty, and I won't be using saddle soap in there because it is a high pile suede texture. It just wouldn't make sense. But again, if it had been dirty inside, that's when I would have considered dunking it in water, which I did with my other Coach bag I found. And lastly, I did the strap, which on this style, it is connected to the bag. So I simply just undid the buckle to make sure I got underneath there to release any trapped dirt. And now onto the final step before we can put the hardware back on, and that's conditioning the leather. I'm using my Bick 4 and just taking a rag and working my way around basically in the same order I did the saddle soap. And I've seen a couple different techniques. Some people will use their hands to really massage it into the leather, which I think is also a great idea. But this day I was just not feeling like getting it all on my hands and just took my time working it in. But I was curious to see if, since I wasn't dunking the bag and getting it totally wet, how it would fare reshaping, because the leather, it was, I wouldn't say stiff even, but it just, yeah, it wasn't wet like had I dunked it. So I ended up stuffing it with this rag shirt as I put the hardware back on, and I'm trying to think. This whole process probably took me max 40 minutes. At least that's how much film I had to cut down for this video. So once the hardware was all back on, I was able to then clasp the bag shut and make sure to position it intentionally with how I wanted it to dry so it would maintain its new shape. Putting the tag back on feels like I'm wrapping a present in a way. It's so satisfying. And then switching back over to the big brush for the final step, and that's to buff out all the conditioning and soap that we just put on the bag. So it gives it that blurred effect, and then it's not gonna be greasy or any high texture. It makes it so it's ready to be worn. So I'll say that's another win for not having to dunk the bag, is I didn't have to wait overnight for it to dry and shape before conditioning it, because I'm so impatient when it comes to waiting in between steps, because I will get sidetracked and not come back to it. So this was such a win to get this done all in the same day. Now, would you look at that? The leather on vintage Coach bags, it is elite. It is so hard to beat. Look how gorgeous this bag looks. And a reminder of the sad before and the after. I wish you could feel just how buttery soft and beautiful this leather is. And again, a reminder of how it was originally at the thrift. I spotted that hardware and immediately knew it was Coach, and I saw the potential. And I've already had the opportunity to put it to the test. I took it with me on my trip to New York. It was my daily go-to bag. It may be small, but it is mighty. It fit everything I needed to go around Soho looking at handbags. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and of course, your comments are always so encouraging. Thanks for watching.